So let's take it upon yourself here, Matt, and let me do a quick introduction. Matt Wideman is our manager of training and organizational development, and he does a fantastic job for us here. Name every single person that comes through our training and coaching programs. It starts with a conversation with Matt. And he's wonderful at being able to design solutions for employers and configure them in a way that makes it affordable and reasonable to match what your needs are. And today we want to just talk a little bit about how we're planning our approach for next year. And I think, Matt, you have, what is it, a 5 point or 5 key questions to ask, and we're going to make that PDF available to help you if you need assistance in how you're trying to outline your program. But the first thing I want to do is just ask our listeners to think about this for one moment. And if you don't know Matt loves sports. I mean, he is always following sports. So Matt, I'm using this analogy because you're our guest today.
Mm-hmm.
But when I think about how we train and develop managers and supervisors, I see everything from we don't, right? And we don't train or develop. We give people the job and we expect that they have the capability to do it. And that's usually comes with the highest level of risk, the highest level of failure. And you can look at those workplaces, and culturally, if Tanya Zion was on the program today, she would say, oh yeah, that becomes a big problem because we have communication issues and we have opportunities for, training and development of employees to do the job and the skill and knowledge transfer and difficult conversations, all these things that get out of control real quick when someone doesn't have the right skill. So I'm going to put it into a sports analogy. So when we think about the NFL, we have 32 teams in the NFL. And of those 32 teams, we have a quarterback on each team. And each team's success and great deal depends upon that quarterback. And if we think about that quarterback kind of as our managers or our supervisors in this capacity, every week before the game, a quarterback will engage roughly in 50, depending on the day of the week, 50 to 90 plays of actual, full speed plays, half speed plays, practicing their craft, just practicing to run their plays on Sunday with a higher level of success. And if you watch a game, you see the quarterback's on the sideline and he's staying warm and he's throwing the ball. Someone's catching it and they're practicing their form. They're practicing a quick drop and they're doing everything they can to stay sharp. And when I think about that, I think, what do employers do to keep the sharpness of the skills of their managers or supervisors? So everything from nothing, we've done nothing at all to help these individuals be successful. Therefore, we're not helping ourselves, all the way up to organizations that you work with, Matt, that, they train and work with their people throughout the year, every year, consistently to give themselves a better chance of performance. And I just say that to kind of enlighten the thought process of people have to have repetition. People have to have practice. And we don't want what you and I talk about often, which is that dip training. I'm going to send them away for a couple of hours. We're going to give them some training and development. And now they're fixed forever, never to be thought of again for training and development. If it's not possible for a quarterback to do that, the highest skilled people in the entire world, it's surely not possible for a underskilled or new supervisor that hasn't been upskilled yet to be able to perform at a high level. So anyway, that's kind of sets the stage, Matt. Let's talk a little bit about your training and development plan, the 5 key questions. What's the first one here that we would want people to think about as we talk about the first of the 5 questions, Matt?
Sure. Yeah. So the first one is really to help identify where you have like any immediate skill gaps. And the question is, what are the biggest challenges your team is currently facing? So what challenges are they facing? What problems have you had in the last year? As you talked about earlier, what complaints have we had in terms of how things are going in the workplace? So what do we need to do to get our people up to speed as better leaders? And so that's the first one that can include, if do you have a higher turnover because of maybe some challenges in your leadership? Have you had accelerated business growth where you're a lot busier than you were in the past? You're taking on a lot more projects. Do you have a lack of bench strength? So you have people maybe doing multiple jobs because you don't have enough qualified people that are in a leadership role. So you have somebody that's maybe filling two roles at once, which can cause some problems of both the inability to manage a number of people as well as somebody that's not real happy because they're doing two jobs.
Matt,
Or do you,
how often is it that when you ask that question, because I know these are questions you're asking when someone comes to you and says, "Hey, we'd like to invest in some training," and I know you don't go, "Great, let's sign you up and be here next Wednesday." You're asking this question: What problem are you trying to solve? What's the
right.
gap?
Yep.
How often is that very clear? We understand the problem, and how often is it a little ambiguous?
It's most often it's pretty ambiguous.
Yeah.
And most of the time the answer that I get is we've got people that have never been trained, or we've put people in leadership roles and they've never been trained on how to lead others. They were really great individual contributors. They were the best person on the line, or they were the best person that knew
Yeah.
the equipment the best, or they were the most efficient worker and they always showed up on time and they have a great attitude. But they put them in a leadership role, and now this person is maybe not performing as well because we've handed them things that are now responsible for that they've never been trained on.
Completely out of their skill set. It's a completely different job because I knew how to run the equipment well or do my job effectively before. It's just a completely different job. It'd
Right.
be like taking the quarterback and say, "Okay, now it's your job to be an offensive lineman."
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
I just want to remind everyone these five key points that Matt's referring to, you can download those. There's a download right by the poll question there. If you see that as a drop down, you can click on that and get the download. All right. Great, Matt. So take us down. What's the next one here?
Yep. So question number 2 is what specific skills or knowledge do you feel that your leaders need to develop to better support their teams? So are there specific skills or skill gaps that you're noticing that you need to have those leaders go through and develop? So is it communication skills? Is it, their personal productivity skills? Is it coaching and the ability to have those challenging conversations? Those are probably our top 4 of those challenges that I have the conversations on that are the true needs are those. But they could be, the ability to motivate. They don't know how to motivate effectively, and they don't understand that people are motivated by different things. And every single person has a different thing that helps them get more energized and engaged in the workplace of getting stuff done.
So when someone brings this to you and says, "Hey, well, we have a real problem with dealing with confrontation, difficult conversations. The job can be confrontational sometimes. This individual or the team of individuals kind of shies away from that." So do you start then adjusting the programming that you would recommend to weight a little heavier in that space, or is
Yeah.
it just off the box? Is it right off the shelf?
Right. Yeah, and I think that's what maybe some people don't necessarily understand is that, we can customize it to your specific needs. And that's what I do most often. I have these diagnosing conversations with them to say, what are your challenges? What are your issues? Here is the off the shelf option, but it's like a menu, right? It's kind of like that menu where you go to, you can pick one appetizer, you can pick an entree, you can pick a
Oh, now
salad.
you're talking about how my wife might order at dinner. I
Right.
don't want this. I need some of this on the side. Can you not do any of that on there? Yeah.
Yep, yep. So we can customize it based on their most, specific needs and challenges, and customize it best to fit their challenges at the moment. So yeah, that's typically it is a somewhat ambiguous question when they come in, and we can kind of suggest based on the conversation. Here's what I would recommend you do: these modules, and do it over this amount of time. So.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay. What's point number 3?
Yep. It's what feedback have you received from employees regarding leadership support or management style? So are you getting feedback from your frontline people that they're not getting any direction? They don't know what to do because they're not getting good communication from their bosses,
Mm.
or they're getting too much. They're feeling micromanaged. They've been given too much to do at once. So there's some sort of delegation challenges that are happening there. And so it helps provide some insight on the from the employee's perspective. There's the boss's perspective, but then there's an employee's perspective that can give you kind of a 360 view on the challenges going on the floor or in the department.
So in that case, I know for many of the employers that we engage very heavily with, that for us starts with an employee opinion and engagement survey. So we're getting true feedback versus anecdotally, I hear, a little of this, a little of that. It's my thoughts or opinions of X or Y or Z. But when you have a survey, whether you've done that survey with AIM or you've done it with someone else, you have some hard results. And that allows, I know, someone like you to say, hey, let me take a look at that.
Yep.
And let me make sure that when we start to configure your program, that we're putting that together in a way that's going to help you achieve better results. And then that allows us to see the effectiveness of the training. And I know you're always trying to tie those two things together there.
Yep. Yeah.
Yep.
And unfortunately, sometimes you get that feedback during an exit interview, and that's not a good time to get it because that means you've just lost someone because of the challenges they're experiencing. So sometimes it's, I'm leaving because of him, or I'm leaving because of my boss. And that, I mean, you've got the feedback, but you've now lost someone because of an ineffective leader.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't speak enough to the importance of those. And I know if you had your way, what you would do is say, hey, before we do the training, let's do a survey.
Yep.
And let's understand exactly from our employees that point of view. We understand management's point of view. That's usually pretty easy to understand. And then what we can do at some point later in the future, after we train, coach, develop people forward, we can measure the impact that we've made.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. What's point number 4?
So number 4, are there emerging leaders or high potential employees who would benefit from developmental opportunities? And so that's understanding, where do you need to develop your future leaders? Where are they now? Are they in a lead position? Are they in an individual contributor role? And the best way to do that is by using things like assessments or feedback from a supervisor, and having those honest conversations with them to say, who's the best person on your team? What do you need to do to get them up to the next level? Some people they may have designs on, growing their career and sometimes someday in the future being a leader. So how do you get that feedback and understand what training do we need to develop for them? What programs do we need to put them through to get them into that role to be the future supervisor or leader within the organization?
When I think about this, it kind of, starting to sound a little bit like a broken record here, but when we think about like the emerging leaders and, the specific training, it's so obvious. We bring in a new employee and we provide that employee, if they're going to run a piece of equipment, they're going to drive a truck, they're going to do anything, fork trucks, they're going to work in a call center. It doesn't matter what their job is. We invest in training that person. But I would say the majority of the time when someone gets promoted then to supervisor, the amount of training that that person gets to have the skills they need to be effective in that job, it's drastically reduced. And I'm just thinking of my son. He just became a first-time manager with his employer. And I mean, he was given the job. He's super excited. And I'm having conversations with him on a regular basis now of how to handle really difficult situations. People are testing him because he's the new guy, right? He's a young man. He's the new guy in town, and they want to know, X, Y, and Z. And some are testing him, and some are real scenarios. But how he manages those is going to be critical. And his employer has given him no training, none at all, to be ready to manage people and hold people accountable. And it's so unfair. I don't really understand why we do that, but I know the common reason you'll hear is we don't have the time to let people get away. How do you help solve that problem?
Yep. I think that is the best way to solve that problem is to work with them on what will work for their schedule. So a lot of our programs, like we have a 6-day program. Well, they'll say, well, we can never fit 6 days of training. Well, but we can divide that 6-day training into half days. We can divide them into 2-hour sessions. We can divide that 6 days of training over 6 months. So if you do one day, you can't afford one full day a month, or can you afford, 12 half days over 6 months? Those types of things, we can be flexible for shifts, coverages, because we know a lot of times, well, we can't have our 6 supervisors off the floor at the same time. Well, can we do it in half-day sessions, things like that?
Yep. Yep. No, I think that's a good point. All right, Matt, let's bring it home with line item number 5 on your
Yep.
on your
So number 5
questionnaire
is
here.
probably the easiest sell if you're looking for funding from your supervisor or your finance people or your CFO. Are there specific business goals that your leaders are struggling to achieve? So that goes right down to the bottom line. What
Yeah.
do we need to train to be better at a business? That's more tangible. It's more understandable from the requesting a finance and funding standpoint. This is going to go directly to us selling more, making more money. So what are those skills that will help them do their job better for us to make more money as a company?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, in the end, that's what we're all trying to do is achieve those goals and help strengthen our organization and have job security. And in the end, that helps our community at large. And I know that's what we are about. And this is why we have our mission, which is to support our community through those efforts. When I think about this and I look at the Gallup poll here, it's almost 60%, 59% of millennials say that they find it extremely important when they take a new job to discuss what are the training plans and opportunities for that. People want to be developed and prepared. It's not that they see training as a punishment. They want that. And that's something that is important to them when they take the job. And I know when we talk to our recruiters, it's the same thing. Who's going to train me? What's the development plan look like? Am I going to be prepared to do this job well, or is there going to be a learn as you go type approach? And I know when talking to recruiters and Randy Sims and the other recruiters that we work with, they're constantly saying that if there's not an approach to training, it's a much harder sell to get someone to say yes.
Yep.
So there's good value in it and be able to promote that across all angles. But Matt, anything else you have before we close out today?
Yeah, I think go back just to your point of not waiting too long or waiting till someone gets into a leadership role or far enough in their leadership role to develop them. Starting at that lead role, starting at the individual contributor, start developing those skills so you have a bit.
Thank you once again for tuning in to This Week at Work. If you enjoy the show, please share it with your colleagues. Forward our invites. Share the link aimea.org/thisweekatwork or follow or subscribe wherever you get your news and entertainment, like LinkedIn, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're everywhere you are. And you can be part of the show. Send your questions and comments anytime to info@thisweek.work. We'll see you next week, 7:30 a.m. Central Time, when we discuss what's happening this week at work.